the frogs gay. They bring in the Jews who are really the fucking Khazars. They're not real. They died long ago.
Right. Okay.
All right. Estoy listo.
Okay.
You too?
I'm fine.
Okay.
All right. Do we start with wine?
As it should be. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we have a petit from Michael David joint. I guess that's what this is.
So it's really pronounced a petit.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Here, you talk, and I'm gonna.
All right. Yes, I am talking now. I really just want to drink wine because this was kind of a nightmare of a day.
Why was it a nightmare?
Doing too much shit. Yeah. And things not working as they should.
Okay, like those lights.
Yes, like those fucking lights. All right, we got cheers.
Oh yeah.
Salute.
There you go.
Yes. Okay. Again.
Okay, we got to do it again for the picture.
There it is.
All right. So I'm Grant. I guess we have to introduce ourselves.
Oh yes, and I am. Where should I call myself? First name or Professor Kubus?
Professor Kubus.
Yeah, Professor Kubus.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm Grant, and then Professor Kubus.
Yes. Some hip hop artist that I shoot call me Dr. J. So either way, it's good. You know?
Okay, that's fine. So what have you been thinking about?
What I've been thinking about?
Yeah,
besides lights?
Besides lights.
Besides
enraging
lights
you.
Yeah. I guess, how about we could just begin with how the contemporary world is insane.
Okay.
Right? Like, and I don't mean it like a, how can you put it? Figuratively?
You don't mean it colloquially.
No, I mean literally. I believe that the Western world has lost its mind.
Yeah, okay.
Collectively. It doesn't matter whether you're left, it doesn't matter whether you're right. I think there is an insanity that just, that's horrible.
And I will warn that our sound girl has a baby sucking on her.
Yes. Sucking
so
on the tatas.
It is absolutely disgusting and sexist of you to be annoyed by the lining. No, I agree. Yeah. I think the kind of the hallmark of traditional insanity is an inability to recognize objective reality as it is.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
I do, but also just suffering of delusions.
Okay.
And so, like, when somebody is clinically insane, as opposed to simply like a sociopathic or sadistic type of person, who maybe somebody who lacks comprehension of suffering of another and whatever, that's not an insane person. That's just somebody who has other psychological issues.
Okay.
An insane person is one who truly suffers from delusions.
Detaches themselves from reality.
Yes, from reality.
Yeah.
And I would say that's precisely what is happening in the Western world. And I don't think it's new, like we like to think maybe it's just been like the last 4 years or last 6 years.
Oh, no, it's like hundreds of years.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if hundreds, but definitely the last 100 years.
The roots are
hundreds of
much,
years. Right,
much older than...
But yeah, I would say we're just getting slowly insane. You see the early 20th century as being the bloodiest century the history of man. Right?
Yeah, up until the 80s and 90s, when it all fell apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, Pol Pot didn't do his thing until the 70s.
Right, exactly, yeah. And early on, with the famous Hitler, obviously, and Stalin.
Yeah.
And so and people always like to relate to him, even though I don't think he was the worst of anybody.
No, the Soviets made the Nazis look like they didn't know what they were doing.
Right, yes, yeah.
As far as like torturing and exterminating people.
And really, a very unpopular view of mine is even just the notion that Hitler himself as an icon of evil, I think, is flawed. I think for the most part, Hitler, I don't think he was really that instrumental. Not as much as Heinrich Himmler, who I would say was much more evil than Hitler himself. I think Hitler had the rhetoric, had the charisma, but
he wasn't the engineer of anything.
No, he wasn't. No,
he was the.
I think if Heinrich Himmler did something else, he would just went along with it. He wouldn't care. He'd be like, yeah, whatever. As long as you get rid of the Jews, get rid of the Jews.
As long as Hitler got to talk in front of people screaming.
Yeah. He just wanted things done, and so I don't really see him as an icon of evil. Where I would say someone like Stalin was more instrumental with the deaths,
like right? Incredibly.
Yeah, more directly instrumental.
He was probably the most of all of the Soviet premiers. He was the most instrumental.
Yeah.
I mean, even Lenin was pretty bad, but the purges began under Lenin.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and they both were, I would say. And I find it, not surprising that Hitler especially when you saw the rhetoric deriving in the 1950s and 60s, became more and more of the evil icon. Mm-hmm. And I really do think it was simply pushed by academics.
I think he was kind of a deified evil, like an evil, an evil, and he was the figure to which all evil would be attributed. He wasn't necessarily. Oh, you're making space.
Yeah.
Okay. I was about to ask you what that move was called.
Yeah, and I really do think that. I also think that the descriptions of Hitler's motivation also were just not really in tune with, probably with reality. Mm-hmm. Again, to go back to the insane contemporary world, but also just not in tune with human nature as a description. Mm-hmm. I think whenever you see somebody in power, somebody who does anything that kind of seems unspeakable, it's normally for a very primal motivation. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right? And getting rid of the Jews, I don't think was his main goal. I think his main goal
was cleansing in general.
I think
the man bathed many, many, many times a day.
Right, he did. Yes.
What is it? Is it Hitler's Table Talk? Mm-hmm. It's a book that with the record of what he would say like at dinner for, I don't remember what years it was.
Yeah.
And I've read excerpts, and he was essentially obsessed. He was completely possessed by his disgust for things.
Yes, yeah.
So it wasn't just the Jews; it was anything
unclean.
Yes. So the reaction you have when you see a spider, specifically.
Yes, yeah. Bees more than spiders.
Yes, you react with this like. You're angry that they exist.
Yes.
In your presence.
Yeah.
It's not a fear.
Right. Yeah.
You're disgusted by them.
Yes.
That was how Hitler.
Yeah, and I
felt
think
towards.
So. And I think for the most part, he also wanted slavery. Mm-hmm. Most of these camps, these Jews worked their asses off. They were helping build the tanks. They were helping build jewelry, to trade and stuff like that.
That is an interesting feature of 20th century. Mm-hmm. I guess totalitarianism in general. Mm-hmm. Any economic system devised that like displayed features of totalitarianism.
Yeah.
Involved essentially slave manufacturing.
Right. Yeah. And I think in the end they would die, and then he would just ditch them and say, "Fuck it," they're disposable. They're not really human, anyways. Yeah. And so once they die, you just push them aside, and you see that kind of evidence in other instances, such as even in Latin America, the way they treated the Asians making the railroad.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's literally images that look just as horrifying as Nazi Germany, mm-hmm. where there were piles of dead Asian bodies, mm-hmm. and just on the side of the ditch, because mm-hmm. for them they were just slaves. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They die, you just throw them. They don't need a burial. Yeah. And so when you see these images of all these dead piles of dead Jews, it's I don't think that's unique to Hitlerism. I think,
not even close.
Right, and I don't think it was just this weird racist rant. I think he saw free labor. He wanted to be the supreme being of everything. Mm-hmm. He really wanted to be the Ubermensch.
How inspired was he by Nietzsche?
That's always up for debate. I argue that he was greatly inspired, at least by the philosophical milieu that not only Nietzsche established in Austria, but also Feuerbach, mm-hmm. who I think was more influential to Nietzsche that a lot of people didn't really focus on. Mm-hmm. One of his more famous lines of Feuerbach was "Zu Nein zu Gott is to Yahweh to mention," which is the no to God is the yes to man. Mm-hmm. And so he built this sphere of philosophical think work where man became the center, but not only man, but like what Nietzsche called, the Ubermensch, the overman, the mm-hmm. more perfected man, mm-hmm. where the people that existed before were basically subhuman.
You said Feuerbach was the name?
Feuerbach.
Okay,
yeah.
Feuerbach.
Yeah, Feuerbach.
What period would that have been?
I think like 50 years before Nietzsche.
Okay, so
yeah,
he was. Okay.
He was, yeah,
okay.
and he was greatly influential
pre-Nietzsche.
to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of this like German, Austrian philosophy getting really popularized in the 1800s mm-hmm. And the early 1900s. And they were extremely influential for a lot of the thoughts mm-hmm. and even polarizing thoughts. You could look at Marx mm-hmm. and then you could look at Hegel, both of them, Austrian, German region. Mm-hmm. but Marx was a reaction to Hegel. And then you see Feuerbach and Nietzsche, who was even more of a reaction to them, because he didn't appreciate any Marxist ideas. He thought they were stupid, right?
Nietzsche?
Yeah. I mean, he had no respect for that kind of thought. And so I think Hitler was more influenced by that Feuerbachian Nietzschean ideology, where man is able to overcome his own petty nature, his own petty nature of religiosity, his own petty nature of succumbing himself to a god. And so he wanted to build man up to, I guess, to be supreme, and get rid of anything that isn't, anything. And so like Nietzsche really argued against the Jewish people, because he said that the Jewish people were influential of producing the slave type of morality, the slave type of ethics that he believes is saying no to the body, no to the flesh, and was very detrimental to human progress. And so, I think he was greatly influential. Someone like Kaufman would argue otherwise, but I think anybody that argues otherwise have never read Nietzsche.
No, and I actually have not read. I mean, I've read a solid half of contemporary philosophy.
Yeah,
is all Nietzschean.
Right. Yes.
So I'm familiar with Nietzschean ideas when I do kind of familiarize myself with them.
Yes.
Themselves, I know they're kind of evident that that's what he would be thinking, but I really haven't.
Yeah, and a lot of like the Nietzschean style philosophy that you see in postmodernism, it's almost like a vanilla version of what Nietzsche really says. They almost try to clean him up, like saying, no, he really just means to create your own morality. He
never
really
said that was necessarily a good thing.
Right. He never said that was necessarily
a good thing. He kind of condemned that.
Yes, and at the same time, I think he was just very volatile in his ideas. I mean,
he literally became insane later.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Was that due to? Do they know? They don't really know why. People don't. Historians haven't really.
They don't. I mean, most likely they said that they believe it was syphilis because they knew.
So it was some external illness.
Right.
It wasn't. Necessarily his psychology.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, deteriorated.
Yeah. So. I mean, it could be. I at this point, I really don't know, but I do know that anybody that calls himself Nietzschean always presents a more flowery version of what he really said.
The more postmodern.
Yes, and it's like, no, he would say things like the intellect of the woman is no greater than that of a child. I mean, this is Nietzschean philosophy. Yeah. This isn't, he would say that he would call the Jews pitiable or wretched. Okay. I mean, this is the type of language that he uses. I think that's
another thing is everyone hated the Jews forever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like people still hate the Jews.
Yes, because they're not real. No,
oh my God.
Let's call them Khazars, please.
Okay.
No.
Where does that from? Where did you...
And so they're
is it an Alex Jones thing or something?
No, there's an actual theory out there that says that the traditional Jewish people died long ago, and that there was a group of barbarians who adopted the religion.
So
the Khazar people.
I feel like that would almost validate the Black Hebrew Israelites.
They actually use that argument.
God.
Yes. Yeah, that is the argument that they use. But they're not the originators of the arguments, but they do buy into the argument that they're not the real Jews.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're insane people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, but it is a funny theory.
Hilarious.
No, but yeah, how the Jews really were disliked by many people. I think that
they always
true.
have been, and I don't necessarily know why. Like I get they're dour people. They're dour and they're kind of bitter and they're like,
yeah.
I mean, the Jewish theology is like really bitter.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if it's just the disposition. I remember I was working on the train last year and I don't remember what their name was. It was like Horowitz or something. But it was like we were working on the train and everybody's like, ooh, I guess the Jews are coming on the train. Everybody wait for the Jew. It was this like, apparently it was every year this like massive Jewish family from New York would come.
Yeah.
To just like be on the train and have a good time. Okay, you couldn't tell by their expressions, but so we, I'm in my like my chef uniform thing with the hat and stuff, and we have to go up in the front of the train car, up in like the the viewing dome with all the seats, and we have to go up and do intros, and we all go up there, and there's this family that's like starts in the front row and is like, so the front row, 4 people, like 12 rows back.
Yes.
They're all just like, and then they'll clap when they need to clap.
Yeah.
And they're just, and then there's, and I kind of assumed, because they're all kind of dark hair. They were all like beautiful people.
Right.
Like Israelis, like Jews are like beautiful people.
No, yeah.
Beautiful
Especially the women more than the men.
Yes, but well, of course.
No, I think objectively.
Most women are more beautiful than most men. But anyway,
yes, but I think there's a huge distinction between the Israeli women.
No, I understand. Yes. But there's this giant family. They're all just like it's like a I'm supposed to sing them a funeral dirge or something. It's like it's and right in the middle of them was this old man with this giant nose, these huge like engineer glasses. And he's wearing like a Yankees hat. And I was like, that's the family. They apparently had a great time. They tipped super well. So I think that there's this idea that Jewish people are frugal. I think it's more accurate to observe that they are very, very like flippant with their money when it comes to displaying how wealthy they are.
Like black people?
Maybe.
I
don't know.
Oh no, that's more of a sign of the blacks. You know,
okay.
Yeah, when they get a lot of money, they just really like to shell it out a lot.
Okay, and of course you're the ethnically diverse one, so you're allowed to say that. And I just kind of have to sit here in horror.
Yeah. Why is that so bad to say?
I don't know.
When there's a wealthy black man, they really don't mind displaying their wealth.
Something about my puritanical Anglo-Saxon kind of
it just makes you
sensibilities.
uncomfortable.
I'm like,
yeah. Well, I'm a quarter black, and so I could
you are?
Yeah.
I don't remember ever hearing that.
I am a quarter black. Yeah, my grandma was black.
What? From Peru.
Mm-hmm.
So you're Peruvian.
Yes.
So is that your mom's mom?
Yeah, my mom's mom.
Oh,
so my mom.
I had no idea.
My mom is a Havsi. Yeah.
Oh, a Havsi.
She doesn't even.
What do they
look
call
like
that
it.
in Peru?
Mulatto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Is there a large African community in Peru?
Yeah, they were enslaved just like in every other country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Brazil would be.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's a large black population.
I don't know why people don't absolutely just trash the Portuguese.
I know. Or
they were
Spanish.
much worse than the Spanish.
No, they were. Yeah.
Portuguese. Oh.
Or they were. But I mean, even the Spanish were much worse.
So do you know what part of Peru your family's from?
My mom is from Lima and my dad's from Arequipa.
Okay, so the two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much a mutt. You know, my other grandparent, my
you
other
act
side,
like a mutt.
Yeah. The other side, you know, is mixed with the white Europeans from Spain.
Yes. So this just sounds like quintessential Peruvian people.
It is pretty much, yeah,
okay.
yeah. But yeah, and so the blacks in Peru pretty much make up the soccer team too, and that's true about Brazil, and that's true about a lot of those other.
It's not true of Argentina.
No,
Argentina does not. From what I've seen and heard and read, they do not have a large African population.
No, neither does Uruguay.
Of course, I think Argentina did. I know a lot of Italians and Germans moved to.
Yep.
I believe it's in Argentina 80%. I could be totally talking about my ass right now, but
a lot of Germans moved to Peru.
I think
it's
80% of Argentinians are of German or Italian descent.
In Peru, there's a huge German population.
There's also a Japanese population.
Yes, a huge Japanese population.
I think the largest population of Japanese people in the world outside of Japan is in Peru.
Yes.
Or is it Brazil?
No, Peru.
Is it Peru?
Yeah,
I know
Peru.
one of their. Was it Maduro?
No, Fujimori.
Fujimori. Fujimori.
Yes. Fujimori was the Asian Peruvian president.
Japanese, Asian Peruvian.
Yes, yeah.
It's really funny as an American to think that other countries describe people the way we do by like commodifying their ethnic identities into like little title blocks.
Right, yeah.
That's funny. Peruvian.
Yeah, Asian. Over there they call them chinos because
that's horrible. But of course they do. Of course they do.
The reason is because when they brought them over as slaves to build the railroads in other parts of the city.
Well, largely they would have been from China.
the thing is that they didn't know where they came from.
They're like, meh.
Yeah, they were basically slaves back home.
You're a certain flavor of people looking, so we're
Yes,
just going to call
and
you
so
the same thing.
they just we're
and
Chinos.
China's the biggest one. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
yeah. But Chinos doesn't denote even Chinese people. Chinos just denotes any
Asian.
Yeah, any slanted
Eastern
eye.
Asian. Okay.
If you have slanted eyes, you're a Chino in Peru.
Okay.
Yes, and so you could be from Vietnam. You could be from anywhere.
Have you ever been to Peru?
No, I haven't.
Or have you? Were you forbidden by your parents to ever return, kind of thing?
No.
Was your mom one of the people who, or she went back a few times?
Like just for funerals and shit.
Funerals.
Yeah, but no, I've never been back just because it's too expensive.
Oh,
It's
to
actually,
fly.
It's actually more expensive to go to Peru than to Europe.
Like being in Peru is more expensive.
No,
or?
to fly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I wonder
probably
where you would
should sometime.
land. Like wonder where you would fly. Like where you're.
Lima.
Well, where you would. I would imagine you go to like LAX, and then I don't know where you would fly from there. If you just straight to Peru.
Probably, but both places that fly directly over there is 3 places: Florida, California, and New York. You could take.
Wow, New York to. Planes are amazing.
I know. Yeah.
When I was the couple times I went to the Czech Republic to teach English, we took Condor, which is an airline that will fly from Anchorage to Frankfurt. It's amazing. Have you ever done that?
Oh yeah, I've been on Condor.
You would fit in the seats. I don't.
Yeah.
Your tiny Peruvian body
Yeah.
would be fine. I remember I had this giant German man in front of me,
Yeah.
and he was snoring, which it's strange to observe, but there's something about a German person snoring that sounds different than an American snoring. Or actually the Czech people. So I was with the Czech people. They snore differently. Actually, I had in high school, I was quite a bit heavier than I am now, and I had sleep apnea problems. And I actually had a CPAP one of the times I was in Europe.
Really?
And
What's a CPAP?
It's the
creepy mask.
the creepy mask. Yeah, it was terrible. I can't wear it now because of the beard. So I
It's
have
Darth
a I have
Vader
a
mask.
mouthpiece thing that I wear now. It's like
You look much better with a beard.
I think I do.
Yeah, you definitely.
I was
do
much
keep
too
that.
British looking with
Yes,
the bulgy British eyes.
Yeah.
But I was in the Czech Republic with the snoring problem, and I would go to sleep, and then there was this one kid, Vitya, that was like a master pianist. It was amazing, but he took a liking to me. We were friends, and he thought it was fine that anytime I would snore, he would kick me in my sleep and then jump back into his bed. So I'd be sleeping, and I'd be like jolted awake.
Yeah.
And then I would just see him barely pulling the blanket over himself, like multiple times a night.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Nice.
It was like this, and he's one of the weirdest people I've ever met.
Really?
Who's not handicapped.
Yeah.
In any way, he was just very strange.
Did you want to punch him in the face?
And
Like
yes.
that kind of strange?
And eventually, I think after the second or third night, because it was like an American to a room of Czech people. So like, you know, like those dumb European beds with like the really thin foam mattress, but they're multiple, like they just squish them all together. So you're like, you as an American, you feel like you're just sleeping in the same bed.
That's
as
very
other,
Eastern European, though.
Is it?
Yeah,
I know
the
they do
we-
it in Scandinavia too.
Yeah, the Western Europeans don't really do that too much.
I don't know. There's something about space conservation in Eastern Europe. That,
Yeah, in the West there's that too. I mean, yeah, in Belgium when I was living there, I don't know, they're kind of communist in terms of.
Amy, how are the cameras doing for time? Do you know?
Are they out or are they still going?
Sweet. Okay.
Well, that one I think records stupid amount because it's Olympus. How about this one?
A stupid amount, as in like a non-standard amount?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, if you get the AC adapter, it'll just record forever.
Yeah.
You have about 4 minutes.
4 minutes? Okay.
Okay.
We want to continue though, right?
Yes.
Push play?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good,
We can just.
So,
I have the audio file, so you can just kind of stitch something.
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, we could just like put an image really quick in between. Maybe just an image of a dick. You know
That
what
would
I mean?
be funny, or like something that alludes to a penis.
Yeah, that could be it.
Okay,
Like a
I don't
pussy.
know. You could draw a picture of a penis and then draw a picture over it.
Do you ever get mistaken for a skinhead?
I was worried about that.
Yeah.
So I first buzzed my head. I don't shave it. I just buzz it down. I've shaved it a couple times, but my skin doesn't like it, and I get all like these bumps all over it, and it looks really gross.
Yeah.
It was my father passed in June of 2017, and then I think November would have been, I was in what would be my last year at the university before I left. And I remember I had like these puffy, so my beard hair actually grows up to here. So when I grow my hair out, it's like
Yeah,
curly,
yeah.
like curly.
That is
like
awesome,
beard
yeah.
curly, and it'll grow straight out, and then my other hair would lay over it. And I think I was due for a haircut, and I have this really nice beard trimmer that I was using,
Yeah.
so I just buzzed it off,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't tell anybody I was doing it because I used to have it wasn't long hair, but it was hair. I had a hair.
Yeah.
And also I'm like white guy balding and like whatever.
Right. No, it actually looks better shaved.
I think it
since-
does.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it would look like now. It's
Yeah.
been 3 years.
Would you ever get like a tattoo of a swastika just to piss people
Unlikely.
off? No, you wouldn't do that.
If I did, I'd have to convince people that it was like Buddhist or something.
Oh yes, that would be
You'd have to
So
it would have to be flipped the right way
Yeah,
and at
yeah.
a right angle instead of at the 45.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this is the correct political climate. I don't think
For that
I don't
joke?
think this is the right context for that. I think I'd get punched in the back of the head.
Possibly.
Anytime I
by
left the
an
house.
Antifa, but we're not in Oregon.
No, Anchorage is really fine.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen Antifa buttons, but I'm like, try
No,
it.
but there are a bunch
I'm
of
like, try
pussies here.
it.
Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah.
This is
They
Anchorage.
want to feel like they're
You
a
know
part
I'm
of something.
strapped. Like,
Yes.
try it. I feel like there's something about people expressing their like of things or their appreciation for things
Mm-hmm.
that I find patronizing sometimes. Like they'll
Like
be
what?
talking about why, like when people talk about why they like a band, it's just grates me
Yes.
to
yeah,
hear
yeah.
them talk about something they so obviously haven't thought through.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, if you tried it all, you wouldn't care about this thing.
Yes. yeah. Yeah.
Of course, most things are
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Most music is terrible.
You think so?
I'm like, oh yes, deeply.
I
Yes.
wouldn't say it's terrible. I honestly think I think pop music, the contemporary.
There's some good pop music.
No,
I'm not saying
no.
there's-
What I mean is that they figure out a formula where it is neither bad nor great. It is just something that you could always have on, and it could continue playing because it's basically an algorithm of mediocrity. And so, and so that's why I wouldn't say it's horrible. There's nothing deficient
No, but I
about
find
it.
mediocrity
Distasteful.
completely offensive.
Okay,
I'm completely offended by things that are
fine. You could be offended by it.
I become angry.
But I wouldn't
with
say
it.
I wouldn't
Like,
say that it is horrible. It's just
I would say
it's
it makes me
mediocre.
horribly angry to hear things be
Yeah.
less than they could be.
yeah, but
And
and a large part of it is because they don't take risks anymore.
No,
I mean,
well, there are bands that do. There is, but
Yeah.
in the
but those ones tend to actually be horrible. I mean,
yes, but I think maybe
Yes.
I exist in a sphere of music outside the popular. And I
Yeah.
don't mean to say that pretentiously. Like I just
yeah, no, but
I-
you
as-
just naturally are.
I play. I'm a
pretentious.
musician.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
play instruments. I engage
playing
with
with you.
music
Yeah.
theory and stuff. And like
Yeah.
I feel like the stuff I gravitate
yeah.
towards
Well,
has the potential for being terrible.
It's just that when I hear like a lot of these indie bands that many of these pretentious assholes like to listen to, and you know 100% of these fuckers like just go online and try to find the least known bands so they sound like they're like, I am so enlightened, I know this particular band, they really only play in a Seattle bar. If you haven't heard of them, really,
You know what's really funny is a
they're
lot of the
fucking
bands I
assholes.
listen to
Yeah.
started as bands that
Yes.
people talk.
No, but they're assholes. I'm sorry. Those people are assholes when they surf the net just to find the least known band possible, so they sound like they're so enlightened.
And
by
that's their
music.
metric for quality. Is
It
how few
is.
people know about it.
Exactly,
Which is
yes.
actually almost
Yeah.
180 degrees directly opposed to
Right.
how one would define greatness. Is when
No,
things are
yes.
great, people know what they are.
Exactly. And then when you hear the music, the guys tend to sound like Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
It's like why do you fucking sing?
Yeah.
That makes it good.
There's
that you
kind
sound
of
like
this-
you're fucking jizzing in your pants.
I think there's. We were talking about this
Yeah.
last. We weren't
yeah.
recording it, but last time we were talking. There's something about, say, like Soundgarden
Yeah.
that they originally did not exist anywhere near the mainstream.
Right. Yeah.
And even
back in the 80s.
like the late 80s, early 90s, I think Super Unknown came out in 1994.
Yeah. Yeah.
That,
By 94, they were pretty well known, though.
yes, it was after Bad Motorfinger that kind of
Right, yeah,
launched
yeah.
them into kind of course I wasn't around.
Yeah.
But
I was because I'm old.
yes, you're old, I'm not. you'll die first.
Maybe, maybe, man.
My luck, man.
Yeah, my grandfather lived to 100 years old, so.
My great grandmother was 102, and she died last summer. Anyway,
Yes, but my grandfather was a great man.
Yeah, was he?
Oh yeah.
Mine was a die-hard Democrat that worked for Rand Corporation.
Oh really?
She was in the middle of the PSYOP.
My grandfather had about like 17 kids from 8 different women or something.
You aspire to that?
He's a beautiful man.
Okay. He won't say yes. It's fine.
A very loving man.
A certain brand of love.
The best kind.
Indiscriminate.
Okay, but yeah, keep going.
Anyway, so the Soundgarden is when you're talking about I think you did a horrible rendition of the way that a lot of kind of contemporary independent artists sing in like kind of 60s inspired, 70s inspired. It's kind of this like it's a way for a man to sing with as little expression of the masculine as possible.
Yes,
it's incredibly neutered.
Yeah,
and I feel like the
somebody
music,
cut off their dick.
Yes, like they didn't have testicles.
Yes, yeah,
never did.
Yeah,
born without them, they're not.
No, I mean someone should just blow their brains out.
Sounds like they want to die.
Yeah, I wish they did.
But the music I gravitate towards, and especially I find that it's interesting is like as a gay man. The kind of the conversation we were having last time that we should have recorded. What a true homosexual.
Yeah.
I gravitate towards music that is like hyper masculine.
Right. Yeah. Well, we didn't record it last time, but let's record it now.
Okay.
Because I do think this is a very important distinction to make, and
no one's making it. Well,
No,
there's
not.
a couple. I feel like Polya has kind of
Okay,
touched,
yeah, yes.
as for women, she has touched on it.
Somehow, yeah, but I think what's important is because, as we discussed as well, that words have meaning, and I think it's important for words to have an actual referent.
Yes.
Right, and so those who are listening, if you know what I'm talking about, let me explain it really quickly,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so when we use words, in order for it to have a meaning, it needs something that it refers to. And so when I say the word, chess table, the existence of a chess table is required in order for that word to have any meaning. Because the sounds that come out of our mouths are arbitrary. Right? So I could make my own language. I could say fla-flu. And then by saying fla-flu, I could point to this and say, this is fla-flu. Now that word fla-flu is infused with meaning because we could look at it. And so
table.
Right. And so in your language, fla-flu is table.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And so now we could begin to speak about it. You could ask further questions. Is fla-flu only chess type of table? I'm like, yes. If it's a regular table, it's actually called fli-fla.
Yeah.
And so now I have a different word to denote another reference. And so the existing things give these words meaning. And so whenever like a novelist or a film writer or producer begins to have like a fantasy world, many times they, like Tolkien, first make a language. Because if you can make a language and then you can make kind of like the psychological makeup of these group of people, like what they find important, is it noun bias, is it verb bias, or whatever. And so we could have...
Because grammar, the way your sentences are structured, essentially display your priorities as to...
Exactly, yeah. Like
in which state of being things are.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in Mandarin is understood as verb bias because normally they pay attention to the action in relation to objects rather than the subject itself. And I think that's a little too much to get into, but just in general, at least there's references to words, and that's what gives it meaning. That's what semantics are. And so with semantics, we could at least begin to say, this word is infused with meaning because of so-and-so, whatever object or whatever idea or abstraction is related to it. Now, the problem that many of these contemporary words have is that they have really no meaning at all. They have no referent. And so Michel Foucault, with everything that I disagree with his philosophy, actually did a very diligent job researching this. And so he found that the first time that in any kind of text the word homosexual was found was, I think, in 1894. You could correct me if you look it up, but it's basically in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Essentially within 100 to 150
Right.
years ago. Yeah.
It's the first time that this word was ever proposed. Now, the problem with this word is that there really is no true reference to it. Like before, you would just call somebody who committed sodomy a sodomite.
Yeah.
Right? He's somebody who puts his dick in another man's ass. Okay, you're sodomizing somebody else, and so you're a sodomite. The same way that if I were to murder somebody, I become a murderer, because the act that I am doing gives my actions some kind of meaning. And so I use the word to refer to what I am while doing this act.
But because you're not a murderer if you're thrhinking about
Right.
murder.
If I'm just thinking of, or just desiring it, right?
Yeah.
Like every now and then I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to thrust a knife into his throat?
Yes.
Like,
great.
yeah, great.
And that doesn't make you a murderer.
It doesn't make me a murderer, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And the problem with the term homosexual is that it's referring to absolute potentiality.
Yeah.
And so there's simply somebody who desires something, and because of this desire, he is this thing. Now, the issue with that is that
Is there another word like that?
not really. No, I
Not that you found.
Not that I found,
Obviously,
yeah.
there could be.
Yes, yeah, we could do other things. I mean, in some of them, I think they did become around the same time, like alcoholic. Many times, alcoholic doesn't refer to somebody who is actually drinking all the time. It could refer to somebody who has a propensity to drink all the time. And so, even if somebody is in AA and they come up there and they haven't touched a drink for 8 years, they're 8 years
still
sober.
an alcoholic.
They still say, "My name is whatever, and I'm an alcoholic." It's like you still refer to that. You still refer to a potency, and this is a 20th century phenomenon in the end. That we do see other instances of this, but these words tend to fall apart because there's nothing really it refers to, and so then we begin to make awkward desideratum's to label somebody as that. And so in terms of the homosexual, back in the 1980s, for example, it was very popular to be a bisexual.
Yeah.
And so you see with people like David Bowie, you would see with Culture Club, what's his name?
Oh, I don't remember his name.
Boy George, yes.
Boy George, yeah,
yes.
Boy George.
Yes. Yeah, with Boy George, like Boy George didn't say I am gay. He actually said he's a bisexual.
I think about men and women.
Yes, yes, and that's what he would say. And so you would see this many times, and it became a phenomenon because it was like, well, what do you call this person that desires both? But the issue is that desire in itself, it's so fickle and frantic. It's like we could desire so many things. Like even you, through conversations that I had with you, at times you were like, I could see maybe,
At some there would
Yes.
be a woman, like I
right,
don't
there would be.
know.
You wouldn't
Not
know
yet,
when,
and it's
yes.
not something I think
right.
about.
But it's still a desire, maybe to produce a child, maybe
Yes,
to do
obviously.
whatever,
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
And so desires in themselves can be contradictory. They could be everywhere.
Yeah.
There's no specific place where desire goes, and many times desire in itself inherently encompasses not really an object per se, but how we relate to things, right? And so for example, if a woman desires a dress, for example, it isn't as if the woman is desiring the fabric. She doesn't look at it and be like, I really want this fabric in my life.
I mean, some do. There's some weird women.
Even then, I think then it becomes a sense of identity to say that I am this type of person.
Yeah.
But even then, for the most part, what does a woman mean when they desire a dress? They mean they like the way they look in it.
Yeah.
They like the way other people see them in it. They like what it represents about them. Like I am a fashionable individual that knows clothing and that can have this kind of identity surrounding it. So desire many times is a reflection onto themselves. Is that what do these things do for me? What rather than desire always being pointing towards an object per se. And so trying to label something based on desire is very, in itself, fickle because desire is itself fickle. And so
It's like when people say chocoholic or something.
Chocoholic, right.
Like something stupid
Yes.
like that.
Yeah. And they say that, and they can say that because we already constructed a sphere where you could say alcoholic. We constructed a sphere when you could talk about potency as being a source of identity. And so with understanding at least desires and terms in this way, when we say the homosexual, we begin to denote something that really is nearly malleable, because you could say the one who claims to be bisexual as a gay man in a closet. I could label it that way.
Yeah.
I could say somebody who's not really true to himself or whatever. We could construct an entire sphere of different qualities that people have, because desire in itself, again, it's sporadic. It's everywhere all the damn time.
Yeah.
We desire to kill people at the same time we don't want to be murderers.
Yeah.
I mean, this is our existence when it comes to desire. So labeling an individual solely based on desire, I find just meaningless. It doesn't really matter. And then you couple that with the phenomena of the contemporary world of identity. Everybody wants to identify as some shit. It doesn't matter what the shit is.
Do you think that just is?
I think it's self-worship.
I think it has to be, because we're not worshiping anything else.
Right. And so it's worshiping.
And as people, we have to worship something.
Right, yes. So we worship the self. And so with the self, we want to construct an identity. So that's why, some of the most obscure thing, like transgenderism, now it's becoming a pop culture phenomenon.
I love that it's called an ism now.
It is. Now it's an ism,
it
right?
has an ism.
Right. And I think we see the same thing with the homosexual. We see people who...
It's almost like the phenomenon of almost forcing people to transition to the other gender as kind of the back-ended result of that, labeling people by their desire.
Right, yeah.
It's almost like in labeling someone a homosexual or heterosexual or whatever, as far as like their sexual orientation is concerned.
Yeah, orientation, by the way, yeah.
Yes. I think it's kind of, transgenderism is a result of trying to apply that kind of thinking to all other psychological phenomenon.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's kind of a back-end result.
It is.
Of it.
Yeah. And I think it began with understanding sexuality as an orientation to begin with. I think sex is an act.
Yes.
First and foremost. It is the penetration of the dick in the pussy.
So for me to...
And the ejaculation of the dick in the pussy. That's what sex is. Prior to this entire like homosexual discussion that happened in the late 1800s, anything outside of that was considered sodomy. So even if you were putting your dick in a woman's pussy and then pulling out and jizzing on her face, that was a sodomous act.
Yeah.
And
because it's what? Sodomy is essentially a sexual act without the potential of reproduction.
Without actually the actualization of it.
Yes.
Right. Well, at least the actualization of the finality of the act.
Yes.
And so there's a teleological structure to it, right? Yeah. Because when we look at it with any other thing, let's say a fucking bee pollinating a flower.
Yeah.
There's an act there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the bee is not...
That doesn't make the bee a pollinator.
Right, yes. There's no orientation that's happening here. You describe the act, and the act has meaning. And so, the word towards the act has meaning because the act actually exists. There's such thing as putting your dick in a pussy and ejaculating. This is a real phenomenon in the world. And there's such thing as putting your dick in an anus and ejaculating. This is a real phenomenon. So we make a word to denote that reality.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you begin to do that, okay, then it's a sodomous act, so you're a sodomite. But when we begin to make these other words to refer to nonsense, it's like, what are we really talking about?
I feel like it's I don't know the context of when people first started considering the idea of a homosexual or heterosexual. I don't know what they were intending to do, whether or not they were trying to...
I think it's similar to what you find now when they call it cisgendered.
Well,
it's just words to denote bullshit.
An act. Or it's something, yes.
Yeah, it's just bullshit.
I don't know what the context is, but I feel like there was at some point a genuine effort to, I don't want to necessarily say normalize, but kind of strip from sodomy the stigma of kind of disgust
of
that
the sin, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
that is what Foucault actually says. And so this part of his history of sexuality, I actually agree with. So he said that in creating this term, the homosexual, in creating this identity, we stripped away the I guess the vicious nature of it, because before it was just simply considered a sin. You sodomize someone, it is sinful, it is wrong.
But that's a sin as anything else.
Right,
is.
as anything else. But still, that's what I was considered to. But then when you make that act an identity of an individual, which in itself is awkward in reality, I mean, like, why would your identity be hinged on where you put your dick?
That's incredibly public.
It is. It's strange because, I mean, an individual could be everything else. I mean, there's so much more that a person can be. He could be a musician. He could be a poet. He could be a scientist. He could
That's why I think that's why I'm so uncomfortable with pride events of any kind, is because it's like we sex each other. Like I don't.
Right.
It's just this very empty expression of what I'm sexually attracted to, and there's this weird.
Yes.
There's this. I have this sense of, or I feel like no one should care.
Right.
What I'm doing, I know
Yes.
what I'm doing, and what the sexual acts in which I engage are the business between me and the person with whom I engage in this act or whatever. I don't understand having entire parades. And I feel like, and I've not necessarily formulated this thought yet.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of now having it, but there's the parade is almost in making homosexual activity an identity for people. You almost necessitate some kind of pride event. In the same way that as an American I might be compelled, as an American is a legitimate part of my identity.
Yeah.
Because I was born here, I live here, etc. Things like that.
What
are we at for time?
Yeah, she's gonna do it again. Yeah, it's fine.
So, as an American, that is a legitimate part of my identity because I was born in a place.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a thing with which a person can
just reset it. Yeah.
Can validly identify, because that's an immutable part of a person's being is where you're born.
Right. Yes.
So I might feel compelled to celebrate that because it's a part of me, but when you I guess include someone's sexual activity in their identity, they're compelled to celebrate it in the same way. And it's just this odd.
Well, and yes, and
because my sexuality, quote unquote, has nothing to do with my identity as a person.
Right. Yeah.
It's a thing I do. Like, okay.
But here's where I think it gets even more awkward. If you do look at the pride, like the pride parade, or when we were seeing how, or when like gay marriage became a thing, nobody actually talks about the act. Nobody does. Nobody. Did they say things like love is love?
It's almost as if that love is love thing. It's homosexuality was incorporated into the identity of a person, their sexual orientation, their sexual activity, and then as that idea evolved over the decades, it encompassed more and more of what that might mean in regards to the kind of the peripheral features of one's identity that might coincide with that homosexuality.
Yes. But nobody actually wants to pay attention to what anybody objects to, because I guarantee you could ask the most conservative Christian, Protestant, or whatever about the gay person, right? And what do they object to? Nobody objects to love. Nobody says that love is evil. Of course,
it's when they're using the word love, it's a complete perversion of what love.
It is, yes. But so when you ask them specifically, so let's say you take a scenario, and you could ask any really conservative religious person this question: is it evil for two men to live with each other, cook, clean for each other, adopt maybe foster children, but they never stick their dick in their assholes. They just live there and they do the loving act.
They love each other.
Yeah, they love each other.
Yeah.
They cook for each other, they work for each other, they pay each other's bills. They live in unison. Most people were like, of course there's nothing wrong with that.
That's not the
fine.
problem I have.
That's not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem that anybody that has a problem with homosexuality is the dick in the ass.
Yeah.
That is the only problem they have, and that is the only thing that you would see in the pride parades. People avoid.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about that instance. Nobody says,
because that's the only thing you
"Let's-"
can actually rationally attack.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And so love is, of course, love is love. I mean, that's a redundant statement. Yes, coffee is coffee. Bread is bread. Okay, fine. Love
That's
is
the
love.
thing is, like, people.
Yeah.
The thing I understand, because I've had conversations with my father about this before he died. I've had many conversations with people who
Yeah.
are kind of rationally oriented towards their religious views. Like,
Right, yeah.
They have no. Like, I remember my father specifically saying he does not disagree with the fact that men can have. Oh, what was the word he used? That there cannot be affection, that there cannot be love, that, like, in
Right,
the
yeah.
real sense, that there cannot be a true bond between men.
Right.
It's literally the act of what one would call sodomy.
Yes.
That's
yes.
literally, and I feel like when most people now are coming from a material
Yeah.
viewpoint, like they're like with a metaphysics based in the material.
Yeah.
That sounds ridiculous. It really does. That their only problem is where the penis goes. So, like, why would you have? Why is that?
right.
You know, and that in that framework, it
Yeah.
really doesn't make any sense.
In reality, I actually would object to that. I would say, from a purely materialist point of view, they should have more of an issue than any religious person, because a religious person, at least in many ways, have an understanding of the individual as a composite. Whether they're an absolute dualist or not, it doesn't matter, but they're going to see a composite of body and soul. And so with that, I think from a religious point of view, you probably can make a better justification for homosexuality to claim that there's an actual identity, the soul of an individual, that is this way. But from a strictly materialist biological point of view, they could claim in a more concrete way why the act is completely...
Because it is obvious that the
Yes.
penis has a biological function.
Yes, yeah. And so from the materialist point of view, they should be actually more against this entire activity than the religious
I just
person.
don't see much value in the materialist viewpoint.
I don't
What's
see...
really interesting,
yeah.
I'm on Twitter quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily interact with a large portion of people,
Yeah.
but I interact with more people coming from I guess what one might call classically religious
Yeah.
worldview
By
than I
classic-
thought there would be.
Yeah.
There's been this resurgence, this kind of
Somebody has a small dick there.
yeah. There's this reaction to
Yeah.
material metaphysics
Yeah.
occurring because it's nonsensical.
It is nonsensical. Yeah.
And it's very strange to come from a world like I would listen to kind of conservative commentators on
Right, yeah.
on social issues and stuff. And
Yeah.
they're like, everyone's trying to destroy religion. Everyone's trying to destroy any sense of the transcendence, which is true. But
I don't think everyone is.
I
the
think
left
that
is,
there's
yeah.
there's more people oriented to a more
classical view.
classically and technically religious worldview than I thought there were.
Well, it's because it's more in tune with common sense.
I think it is.
Yeah, it's just the way we view
which staunch
Materialists.
staunch materialists
Yeah.
would argue
They would, yeah.
that it's not sensical.
And that's why I think the staunch materialist has much more. They should have much more of the negative reaction towards sodomous acts, when the religious person could at least distinct the individual from the act, because the individual in themselves would be a composite of body and soul who has vices, who has virtues simultaneously, right? And that cannot be eradicated. And so I really don't understand the materialists,
It's because the
non-objection to it.
materialists require no coherence between their personal philosophy and their lived experience.
Right, yeah.
None.
They have none, yeah.
I am not convinced that any staunch materialist has ever actually appreciated the experience they've had when they're dreaming.
Right,
like in
yeah.
sleep. I don't think that they've ever actually given that any
Yes,
real
yeah.
credence.
Yeah.
Because just having a vivid dream should tell you that there's more.
Right.
There's
yes,
more
yes.
to existence than what we can see.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yet,
Even the study of quantum physics should really tell you that. The fact that there are no detectable actual placements of electrons without the observer.
something interesting. I've been reading this selected works of Aquinas. I think it was
right.
published by Penguin or something. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's this huge tome of just
Yeah,
work
yeah,
by
yeah.
Aquinas. And something I came across is I don't necessarily know how to articulate it. You need more wine?
Yeah.
Okay. You have the box, the bonus,
Yes.
the Malbec. What did you think of this What did you think of this?
It's good. I actually like the Pinot Noir a little better, but
That
it's
was
good.
so we had Mayomi last time. It's Pinot Noir.
Yes, yes.
I'll have to bring that again sometimes because
No, I love
that's
that.
my favorite Pinot I ever had.
Yes, that was. I probably have to admit.
That's
as
like
well.
it's spectacular.
It is, yeah.
Anyway, I've been reading this book of Aquinas,
I could speak.
and in
This phenomenal Pinot has some box wine.
I know. But it's cheap.
box wine isn't that
Thank
bad.
you.
I've been reading Aquinas now in talking about external being that is external to what someone might be able to perceive sensually.
Yeah.
That knowledge starts with that which is sensible,
Yes, yeah.
be seeing, feeling,
object,
etc.,
yeah.
tasting, whatever.
Yeah.
And your knowledge starts there
Mm-hmm.
and logically should transcend that.
Yes, yeah.
That I thought was an interesting.
It is, and there's one of my favorite contemporary authors is Edward Fazer.
Yes.
And in his in one of his books, The Last Superstition, I love in the last chapter he began with this Chinese proverb where he said, when the finger points in the moon, the idiot looks at the finger.
Yeah.
And what that really tells us is that when you begin with a physical, right? When you begin with the empirical is always pointing towards something beyond itself.
Yeah.
And the more you analyze the physical, the more you see that there's an underlying reality of being that
When you
allows
say
the
reality,
physical.
what do you mean? What's the word reality mean?
What I mean is what.
I feel like that's important for people to know.
Yeah,
Because I don't think that word
is used that often.
is used
Yeah.
often or correctly or referring to the correct thing. Or,
Yeah, I mean, what I mean by that is just being.
Okay.
That being.
So the word capital B being
Yes.
is interchangeable with objective reality
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes, it would have to be because
in a more
order-
nuanced way. but
Right,
still.
because in order for an equivocal being to be at all, it requires univocity to be.
Which is what objective means.
Yes, to be univocal, right?
Is
To
an
be
honest-
universal.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, because without the universal, there's nothing that can be equivocal. The only reason why things can be subjective and equivocal is because there's a reality to equivocate.
Mm-hmm.
And so the univocal state of reality must be in order for us to equivocate that univocal state of reality. And I think that just becomes obvious that this is why we construct, I shouldn't construct, but discover universals. Mm-hmm. This is why we have different words, I guess single words for realities such as leaves, as we talked in, not in this thing, but in the other course, about that. If we were to really be honest, every leaf is unique, right? Every snowflake is unique. But we are able to pick out essential qualities of what makes a leaf or a snowflake or a leaf to say that they're all leaves. And this makes things less insane, because if we had a different word to denote every individual snowflake, we can never speak of anything, because we would just have to keep coming up with new words for everything. And so we point out universal principles, universal like realities of what makes something the thing it is, which is called essentialism.
Yeah.
And understanding its essence, we could come to know the objects that we experience. And so
That actually gives some new definition to the word essential.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's all it really is. And we teach it to young children very early on, right? Because there's
you couldn't teach a child to speak without it.
Well, you couldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like a dog and a horse, for example, have so many things in common.
Yeah.
They have 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 nose,
4 legs,
tails, hair, and there's so many things in common.
They eat things.
They eat things, right?
They walk largely the same way.
Yeah, they could run.
Yeah.
You know, the way that the knee is bent. I mean,
same. Yeah.
all those things are the same. And so we point out essences, essential qualities to say, this is what makes this distinct from this object.
Mm-hmm.
And that
it would be
this group
difficult
shares in that.
to just a layman, anybody, just say what makes a horse in a way that a dog is not.
Yes, yeah.
That would be difficult.
It is.
I think that's the experience is required to define
it is, yeah. And that's many times what the study of biology originally was. It was taxonomy.
Yeah.
It was to observe these things that can be drastically different. You fucking look at a Great Dane and a Chihuahua.
I say that all the time. I can't believe they're the same animal.
Yes, I mean
The fact that they're classified the same way.
Exactly, yeah. It's because
the fact that they can breed.
Yes, and it's because they share essential qualities. Whether it's simply their DNA, I mean, we could keep going into what makes the thing.
So obviously,
the
if someone had access to a DNA, if they had access to the gene of an animal, you wouldn't have to guess what was the same.
Right,
but those distinctions had to be made for thousands of years.
They did, and they were
before we had that.
Yes, I mean the structure of mammals. I think that category was constructed around the 1200s. It's really long ago. This is not something new, and so yeah, observation of whatever, whether you observe the DNA structure, whether you observe whatever. I mean, those things make things easier.
Do you think that there is a point in which you can categorize too much?
I guess if you make unnecessary distinctions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what's an unnecessary distinction? Just out of curiosity, like.
What we see nowadays, like people who identify as whatever they want.
Demisexual.
Yeah. I think those
That's
are
my favorite one. Is demisexual.
Those are unnecessary distinctions.
Do you know what demisexual is?
I
it's demisexual. I'm going to butcher it in some short-haired, dyed hair.
People are going to get mad at you.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Demisexual is essentially like you have to have formed a tight emotional bond with a person before you fornicate with them. And it's like, so like 80% of people, like normal people who exercise caution and discretion in their sexual activity.
Right, yeah.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are unnecessary distinctions. And partly it's because it's just based on feelings. I don't see why you make a distinction of what people identify as.
I think that's at least partially a result of reducing human feeling and experience to something material or purely contained in the brain, something chemical.
Yeah.
I know you haven't spent enough time reading Jung. I would say enough because
I have not.
There's something. So I suppose one would classify Jung as a phenomenologist as far as philosophy is concerned.
Yeah.
What is phenomenology specifically?
It is a description of truth through one's lived experience.
So, I can't remember his name. Who's the Scottish guy? Essentially the first major atheist. I can't remember his name.
Bertrand Russell?
No. He was much older than that.
Oh, even
it was essentially like all truth is derived through lived experience.
I
can see his face. Dang.
David Hume?
Yes.
David Hume, yeah.
Would that have any
Is he a phenomenologist? Not too much. Because
I've never read Hume.
The thing about Hume is still observation. Okay. And so phenomenology.
So what is the difference between someone who's an observationist?
Because as an observationist will be someone like Bertrand Russell. So he observes things.
You know what you can observe.
Yes.
Okay.
Phenomenology is from your personal lived experience, and so your description is how you're living.
Because Jung emphasizes the universality of human experience more than
because he looks at archetypes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you feel like that's more valuable than?
Well, than phenomenology, yes.
So you think Jung is not necessarily useless in the same way that most phenomenologists are?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't have any problem.
Because I know anytime I've referenced Jung, you've kind of you've gone phenomenology, and I'm like, I'm not necessarily sure.
And I don't think I've done that. I think you interpreted my saying of him that way. I don't think he's merely. I mean, he's a psychologist for one thing, so it's hard to classify him with one of these philosophical distinctions, but I do think that
Because I don't necessarily think it's possible to read Jung and necessarily disagree. I think that if you approach his work honestly and with an open mind, he's essentially
more like, if I'm going to use a proper category, he's a behaviorist.
he's a psychoanalyst, is what.
Yes, a psychoanalyst, but in the time frame of behaviorism,
Okay.
the same time frame that
Because he was writing in the or late 1800s all the way through the 1950s.
Yes, yeah, basically like Freudian behaviorism, and there's more,
Which I guess is more of a scientific approach to the philosophy of mind.
Yes. I mean, contemporary scientists.
I think
would
it's hard to
disagree.
categorize.
Yeah, I think behaviorism in general
Because
is.
essentially, if you read... So I've read Jung's autobiography, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Man in the Symbols. I think he's the... I don't know if you'd call him a thinker, because I don't think he...
He is a thinker.
Yes, I mean,
But I also think
insofar as...
I think Freud was a thinker as well.
Freud was right about a lot. But Jung essentially exposed himself to experiences and literally just wrote down
Which is
what he
phenomenology.
was.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that Jung was asserting anything more significant than what he experienced. I think that any metaphysics that comes from Jungian thought is a result of people interpreting his work. I don't think that in his work he's asserting any...
Yeah, I mean, that is what phenomenology is essential. That's what I said. It's philosophy through lived experience. And so when you do that, it becomes descriptive and non-prescriptive.
So do you believe that someone's... Because phenomenological is a word.
Yes.
That's not... You can't really... It's not specific to the field of thought. I feel like phenomenology can be valid as long as people understand it for what it is.
I think it's greatly valid. I think we need phenomenological...
But it's not a basis for metaphysics. Or it's not a holistic basis for metaphysics. So I don't think I've ever grilled you on this before. But
I guess how do you define basis?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Well, what I would say is that, because if you want to know the origins of this phenomenological thought, it actually started with Meister Eckhart, who came after Aquinas and stuff.
So this is old.
It is old, yeah.
Okay.
And then you see this
The
influence.
roots of it are old,
you see the influence to Husserl and many other German thinkers, because this is, I mean, phenomenology really is a German phenomenon.
I associate it with the Germans.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay.
And so what Meister Eckhart said was that intellectual investigation could really only take you so far. Like, it takes you to a point of understanding and comprehending things in an objective way, but you can never know it intimately.
Which is a different
Which is
thing.
right, which is a real distinction. And so what phenomenology attempted to do was take what was understood as objective things that are indisputable. So many of the conclusions from Aquinas, in general, I think even till today, is indisputable. They're just rational conclusions, both deductive and inductively.
Which you would reach in pursuit of the truth, no matter.
Right, yeah. But can that ever give you anything beyond that? And it really can't. And I think
so. Do you think phenomenology is this, or it's hard when you say the roots of phenomenology are essentially what, the 1300s?
Yes.
Because Aquinas died in 1274.
Yes.
Something.
Yeah.
It's hard to say phenomenology to describe what would essentially be 700 years of thought.
Yeah,
it's hard to.
It kind of is, though, because it's very intimate, and it's also very mystic. Like, there's something very mystical about.
Because I feel like if someone were to purely adhere to rational ontology,
yes,
you would be remiss in that you're essentially excluding the mystical
You are.
of the
Yes.
mystic features of human experience.
Yes, and this is why I would say even Thomas Aquinas himself wouldn't disagree. Like before he died,
I don't think Aquinas would have asserted that everything he had to say was everything that would be
right.
would be
but,
said.
but also that everything should be rational. But I mean, before his death, he said,
I don't think you can be a Catholic and say everything
right.
should be
Yeah,
rational.
I mean, he said everything that he's written is straw in compared to what he experienced. This is a very profound
I think
statement.
any person who walks into a Gothic cathedral
Yes.
would say exactly the same thing.
They would, yeah. And so he was aware of the deficiency even of his own writings, that they take you to a certain limit. But this limit...
words can only express so much. I
They
think is
can.
the-
Yeah. And so what Meister Eckhart attempted to do was he wanted to put the lived experience of this mysticism into words. And this is the
But
beginning of
I
phenomenology.
think the problem with that in all phenomenology to follow, and I haven't read much between, say, Aquinas and earlier,
Yeah.
and maybe Kant and things like that. I haven't.
Kant is different, though.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just giving context
Yeah.
to what I haven't really.
Okay.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I feel like the attempt to express that the experiential feature of human life,
Yeah.
like religious experience and mystical experience and things like that, they cannot be expressed in words. I don't think you. I think you can describe them insofar as you can describe anything.
Yeah. And
Poetically and things
yes.
like that. But there's some. It's like the cathedrals I've been to. Like there is an experience of walking into a cathedral that reading would never provide you, and that's
Exactly.
not the point. And I feel like that's the fault in phenomenology. I've been to concentration camps in Europe and ghettos and things like that. I've been to places that have made me experience things, phenomena, I don't know what you would call them.
Yeah.
Say
Which is
walking
phenomenological,
the
yeah.
ascension to the kingdom of God provided by walking into a cathedral, or the descension into hell itself, walking into or onto the grounds of a concentration camp, standing in ovens and things like that. That you do not understand until you have been there.
Yeah.
You can understand them rationally and you can articulate them
yes,
verbally,
yeah.
but you don't know that.
You don't know it until you experience, And I do think that that's what's important phenomenology. And so
But I think it needs to be understood as a
yeah.
partner to some kind of
does.
objective metaphysics.
Exactly.
And I feel like
because without it gets fucked up.
yes.
And this is what the beginning you see with Heidegger, for example. Heidegger attempted to do without metaphysics, right? And so
But he uses the language of metaphysics.
he does,
And I think that confuses
yes,
people, 'cause
and he would say himself that his philosophy is metaphysical. And so it isn't as if he's rejecting
it technically
metaphysics.
is. Like,
It
as far
is,
as like
right.
if you were to look like metaphysics up in a dictionary, yes,
right.
it's metaphysical.
It is, but I mean, many of his language is directly stripped from Meister Eckhart. So Meister Eckhart first used the word Grundseins, the grounding of being, and so this is where Heidegger gets Dasein.
Yeah.
So, but he just he removes the Grund part. He removes the ground part, and so then he says, rather than Grundseins, he just simply talks about Dasein.
Yeah.
As their being.
And I feel like for me in my reading, I think I've gotten through Being in Time halfway, maybe 8 times.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I've ever talked to you or anybody else about the recklessness of using language just to suit your own purposes is perfectly displayed by Heideggerian thought.
Yes.
Because when he says ontology, he does not mean what you and I mean by ontology.
No, he does not,
it makes me insane.
He does, because he's using it in terms of from phenomenological point of view.
Which
from a
is
lived
separate
experience.
and subordinate to ontology.
It should be,
Same with epistemology, same with all these other fields of metaphysics.
Yeah, and so that's the problem that I have with many with phenomenological investigation is that
because
it's limited.
They're expressing verbally the mystical features of human experience, like I've said, but they're articulating it as if it is basis for some kind of objective metaphysics.
Yes,
which is impossible.
Which is and I think phenomenological investigations can be more rich once you have a solid metaphysical grounding
I think that's what's happened to me.
With reason, yeah. And then you could read it and be like, wow, this is rich. This kind of investigation can be rich. And I think is necessary to grow philosophically and intellectually with phenomenological investigation, but it needs to come after. It cannot come prior. It cannot be the grounding of your metaphysical beliefs.
Because it's too subjective.
It is, yeah.
It's too specific to your own.
Yes.
It's a thing. Each person's specific mystical or religious or experience of the beautiful or experience of like the purely aesthetic or things like that are specific to, because your human psychology is going to interact with those experiences specifically.
Yes, and we could point out, and this is why someone like Jung is good in that he tries to point out universals through archetypes.
Yes,
and so our personal experiences.
I think you have to.
You have to, right? And so he's still appealing to something beyond phenomenology. Yeah, he's appealing to something objective.
That's why I think he's one of the only.
Yeah,
people associated with. I think he's from Switzerland. He's from Switzerland.
Yeah. Who also speak German.
So essentially German. They're
yes,
Germanic.
Yes, yeah.
He's one of the only phenomenologists that I think is as relevant and useful as he is.
Yeah,
because he readily admits over and over and over in his work that what he's saying is not all that needs to be said and is in no way holistic.
Yeah, but I think what would make him more rich is reading someone like Thomas Aquinas first.
Yes.
Reading Thomas Aquinas and then reading Jung, you'll get much more out of it than
and
just
I feel like
Jung
I don't...
alone.
What? We worked together maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been years. I remember speaking with you about kind of... You revealed to me this world of objective metaphysics. You listed off all these people. So I went and I kind of familiarized myself with them, their ideas. Yeah. And I was able to understand this kind of phenomenological work more richly. It's the same way with like reading the Bible. There's so much about the Bible that is kind of specific human experience that is more richly understood with
after
a basis.
Metaphysics, yes.
Something the Protestants completely disregard.
Oh, I mean, they completely butchered it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately...
And I say that as someone who is raised Protestant and probably most closely associates with them.
I mean, I think many contemporary Catholics also butcher it. I mean, they start teaching these narratives as simply stories to have a song and dance with. But I mean, there's a reason why for the majority of the church's history, first they studied metaphysics and then they read the Bible.
And I try to explain that to people, and they don't.
Yeah. I mean,
they think that's wrong. They think it's a barrier to the Bible, and I'm like, no, it tells you.
I mean, if not,
people have been studying this for thousands of years.
You're going to look at the book of Genesis and be like, this is a cosmology. And you know what? Nobody through like almost 2,000 years of the church ever believed it was a cosmology. It just wasn't a thing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so no, it wasn't. I mean,
it's too ancient to have any literal relevance.
It wasn't meant to be that. You could read someone like St. Augustine, 300 AD, who didn't take it literal. He had a
because
cosmology.
it's taking something like the myth of creation, or of Adam and Eve, or etc. It strips it of its richness. It reduces it to the material in the most grotesque way.
Right, and it's like it wasn't meant to be read that way. It's like me reading Aesop's fable and being like, "Where is the turtle, tortoise, and the hare now?" I mean, did they really exist? I mean, why would I ask these questions?
Literally, who cares if they exist?
Exactly.
Who cares if Adam and Eve existed?
That's not the important part of the narrative.
Because that's not at all.
Yes.
Whether or not they literally existed, or the effort spent to prove whether or not they did is some of the greatest waste of the intellectual waste of the modern era.
Yeah. That wasn't the point of the story. It was about human nature. It was about the fallen nature of man.
Because if you're concerned with the literal interpretation of the story, you can't glean the archetypal significance of the story to the fullest.
Yes, you can't.
Because it's much easier to project yourself and your consciousness onto mythical figures than it is to the people who literally existed.
Yeah. And the problem with biblical literalism is I think that has been like the greatest issue of any religiosity of the contemporary world. It's because so many people are promoting this biblical literalist point of view. It's like this is the greatest degradation of religion at all. I mean, to look at that and say this
Hindus
is a literal
don't do that. Buddhists don't do that.
They don't.
Muslims don't do that.
No. And Christianity, for the majority of history, has never done that. Biblical literalism is literally about like an 1800.
Mystical and religious experience
Yes.
to the scientific.
No.
Because they're immeasurable by
Yes.
it.
Yes. And it's
and
ridiculous.
I think it's largely based on where we live and the lack of tradition and legacy here.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Native Americans would have a sense of tradition and legacy that we don't have. I feel like you can attribute that for Americans who haven't existed here for very long at all. That's the only way you can interpret anything like that, because we don't have cathedrals. We don't.
No. Yeah.
Literally, just walk into a cathedral.
Yes.
You are not on planet Earth anymore.
Yeah, like a real cathedral.
Like a real
not
Gothic,
something in Alaska, yeah.
No,
yeah.
Alaska's the worst example.
Yeah.
There are some churches on the East Coast that will kind of do it.
Yes,
a
there
little
are,
bit,
yeah.
But
dude, there's some beautiful
literally
ones
just like Americans don't have that.
No,
I feel
they
like
don't.
a lot of this, I mean, the French, a lot of the postmodern thought from the French, I feel like was just kind of poetry almost, or you could reduce it to the poetic. A lot of this Christian literalism is born here.
Yes,
in the
it is.
U.S.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's because Christians don't have any opportunity to experience the mystical.
Yeah. And I do think a lot of it is simply the heretical Protestant influence.
Yeah.
That's all it is in the end. I mean,
Our churches were made of logs.
Yes. Yes.
By necessity, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But we lost it. I understand.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's fine.
Yeah.
I know, and I understand practically why it was the case.
Yeah.
We didn't have the infrastructure here to build magnificent buildings until
Yeah.
the damage was already done. Fine,
Oh,
we
okay.
can have audio. We can put it.
Yeah,
in
yeah.
We're figuring it out.
Well,
But
we're just
this is too important part of the conversation for me to forego.
Does that one need more batteries? I'm having another one charging.
Is the Olympus still alive?
Okay. Yeah. You could grab the battery from over there.
I don't know. I just don't feel like Americans have had the opportunity to experience. I've only ever had those experiences in Europe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
As far as architecture's expression of it.
But I do think that's because, this is a Protestant country.
Yes.
I mean, we can't eradicate it. Even the secularists of this country are Protestant.
Yeah.
This is why we hold sexual morality as the greatest sin of all, right? I mean, who do the prisoners kill in prison? They don't kill like the mass murderers. They kill the child molesters.
Yeah.
They view sexual morality
or anyone who has committed any form of. Have you taken the battery out? Yeah. Okay.
it goes backwards on Sony.
It's not even.
It goes backwards on Sony. Yeah, I told you everything on Sony
Sony's
is
terrible.
backwards.
Sony and Olympus, is that what we're using? Oh my god.
Yes, I know. Yeah. It's because everybody rented out the good shit.
We're hypocrites.
Yeah. Did you push record?
We should do a discussion on photography. I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, we really need to.
Yes. Anyway, I feel like or what you were saying actually.
Yeah.
I just remember what you were talking about. It's not just that they kill child molesters. It's if you are even just accused of any form of sexual assault at all.
I know.
Or impropriety.
You are the greatest demon.
You are the greatest demon. in a
Yeah,
prison.
you could be somebody who just took a gun and shot 100 people. You're not as bad as the one who molested one child.
Is accused of molesting.
Or just accused of it.
Accused of molesting a grown woman
Yes.
or just
I
anyone.
mean, this is all puritanical, heretical point of views.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's very strange. And so we kind of see that in just in the U.S. And so
why do we love sex so much? We're not love, but why are we so concerned with it?
Hold on, what were you going to say?
Child molesting is slightly more than just
I agree, but I think objectively you could say that me taking a gun and blowing 100 people away is worse than that. It is, but
in a purely utilitarian way.
From any point of view,
Yeah.
I mean, even from a natural,
You have killed 100 people.
yes, even from a natural law point of view, I'd say yes, this is objectively much worse. All right, if hell exists, I am going to hell faster for that than for succumbing to some kind of sexual desire with a child.
Yeah.
And so it's from the puritanical point of view, they don't see it this way, and because they flip things around in that worldview, and many people just don't even understand the history of Protestantism, the derivation from the other heresy of Albigensianism that existed at least for 1,000 years before we saw the heretical view of Protestantism, and this is a very old heresy that existed in the West, that existed in the church, that snuck its nasty head during the Protestant revolt and really became mainstream after that. And it's still mainstream. When you ask most people about Christianity, the first thing they think about in this country is a fucking Protestant. They think of some kind of Bible-thumping individual.
Well, they think of like Westboro Baptist Church.
They do.
Yeah.
That is what they think of. And they think about the sexual morality. They think of everything. When the majority of
almost everything in
does.
Protestant quote-unquote theology is oriented towards sex.
It is. It's weird. It's a very and because because Protestantism and Albigensianism viewed sins of the flesh greater than that of the mind. And this is what was one of the main distinctions, because even when you see the founding documents of the U.S., why do we have something like freedom of speech, for example? This is very Protestant. It could only exist from a Protestant worldview.
Do you disagree with that? Right? The protection of freedom of speech?
What I would say is that free speech does cause more disruption. It definitely does.
Yeah.
Of course. Whether I disagree with it or not, I mean, I wouldn't say that I disagree with it, but what I'm saying is that it's
you would have been killed so far if that wasn't a protected right.
Right, yeah. What I am saying is that freedom of speech can only exist from a Protestant worldview. It cannot exist from a Catholic worldview, from a traditional Christian worldview, because for traditional Christianity, sins of the mind were greater than the sins of the flesh.
And speech is of the flesh.
Yeah, no, of the mind.
Of the mind. Okay.
Yes, speech is of the mind. And so when you're, this is why, for example, during the medieval period, you weren't executed for sodomizing somebody else. You were executed for protesting and saying that it was okay to sodomize somebody else. You see, this is the distinction. And so they viewed...
And that's just, that. I feel like this whole inversion is...
Yeah.
A reflection of our devaluing of the logos itself.
It is, yeah. And so even if you yourself never sodomize somebody, the fact that you're
talk about sodomy.
the fact that
sodomy is your
I know. It's fantastic. No, but even if you didn't, if you were protesting and convincing people that it was okay to sodomize, you were during the medieval period, you were worthy of execution, while the person who actually put his dick in somebody else's ass was not.
You were just weird.
You were weird, and you were maybe forced in the most harshest places, like in Spain.
Yeah.
You might have been forced to repent,
and
then move on.
Yeah.
Like that was your punishment. But if you were to stand up and say, like, no, what I am doing is okay, that's sin of the mind.
You did a really good Spanish finger thing.
Yes, yeah. and then you are worthy of execution. This is what the distinction is. But within Protestantism, it's the reverse. It was the fleshly acts that were more evil. And so if you were a glutton, if you were perverse in sexual morality or whatever, that became the evil. If you were alcohol, if you drank a lot of wine, this is why they drink grape juice in the Protestant churches, right? Because the sins of the flesh were viewed as they're the horrendous ones. And so if you lose your virginity, it's like, oh my gosh, you lost your virginity, you cannot get it back.
I feel like the concept of like a homosexual, like you were talking about earlier, is only...
It's only from the Protestant worldview.
It's only feasible in the
it cannot exist in any other worldview.
Because for me, I was thinking about this earlier, like for me to call myself a carpenter, I have to be working with wood all the time.
Yes.
And that's how I make all of
my
my
money. You're working with wood, but not the right type of wood.
Yes, I understand. Yes, but like, or something like that. Like for me to be a painter, that must be all I do.
Yes.
And that's the way I make my money.
Right.
And I feel like for me to feel like I could really call someone a heterosexual or a homosexual, I like to call someone a heterosexual, they must be having straight sex constantly and make their living doing it.
Yes, yeah.
Because at that point, point, it is something like that is allowed to be your identity if that's all you're doing.
Yes, if that's all you're doing,
Yes.
right?
So like
You
someone
wake
is
up in the
not allowed
morning
to
and
be.
you're
You
fucking.
can't call someone a philosopher if they think about things sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
Someone is a philosopher if that's what they dedicated their
Yes.
life to doing.
Like Diogenes.
So
yeah.
it's weird to me to attribute, because I don't think that I think you can attribute titles to people based on action if
Yes.
that's part of who they are.
Right, yeah.
Because there is a point at which if someone's a bricklayer,
yes.
that's what they do
Yeah.
all the time, and that's how they provide for their family. You can
Yes.
call someone at that point. I'm like these bricks. If I were to lay one of these, I'm not a
Yes.
bricklayer.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So I guess you could call someone you could call someone a homosexual, quote unquote, if that's all they did.
And if that is denoting not an emotion, but an actual act.
Exactly. If that's
Yes.
constantly what they're doing.
Yes.
Okay, then he might be a gay.
Maybe. Right, yeah. But I think it's better for these words to denote something actual rather than
Exactly.
potential.
I understand. I'm just trying to think of a,
Yes,
to bring it full circle. I'm trying to think
but
of,
I don't think that can ever exist because an individual can never just do one thing. An individual is doing many
I think
things
that they
all
like,
the time.
I think that they can poetically, that you've dedicated your life to this thing.
I don't think you can.
No, I know. I understand.
Yeah.
Technically, you can't.
You can, yeah.
But in some kind of artistic kind of way.
Right,
like,
yeah.
No, I don't mean technically artistic. That's something
Yeah.
we can talk about later. But like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but like in some kind of like, ooh,
Yeah.
I eat, sleep, and breathe
Yeah.
painting.
But-
like it's
yeah,
something.
but
No,
nobody
you
ever
don't
does.
actually do that.
No,
I think
yeah.
that's a
I
dumb
mean,
phrase.
Yeah,
but like,
we're many things.
Yeah.
And I think we need to go back to that. This whole thing about the identity and all that shit, I mean, just, it's useless. It's pointless. It's meaningless.
it doesn't help us
We're not-
manifest our nature. In
Right.
Any way.
We're not just one thing. We're many things.
Yeah.
We're both virtuous and vicious with each one of our.
And I feel like that's the
daily lives.
flaw of intersectionality is somehow attributing the same level of gravity
Yeah.
to every single feature of a person's
Right.
personality and character and being.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be the case when somebody becomes demonized because of one flaw that they have in their life. I mean, we all have flaws. We all have virtues. And we try to exalt the virtues and we try to tamper down the vices. And we fail at times.
I think we have a complete misunderstanding of vice.
Yes, we do. In the
yeah.
contemporary world,
Yeah,
we
completely.
do.
Yeah.
Basically, right now, vice just means things that...
I eat too much. Like,
Yes, yeah. Well, that is a vice. I mean,
yes, I understand.
that's
But
what I
like
understand.
that's essentially.
Yeah.
Maybe you drink too much. You smoke too much weed. You eat too much.
But vice is just something
Yeah.
that is opposite of virtuous.
Yes.
So there's vicious and virtuous acts. So to be a coward is a vice.
Vice essentially now just means something you're addicted to.
Nowadays,
That's
yes.
that's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
totally different.
Yeah, by vice, I guess I just mean something that's not virtuous.
Yes, exactly.
And so cowardice is a
Again,
vice.
we can talk about that.
We're
That's another
courageous
thing
and
we can,
virtuous.
we can
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about what virtuous means.
Right, yeah.
We have a lot of fodder, but
We do.
seeing as it is almost 11 p.m.
Yes, I think we should
this is a
end
good
this.
time
Is it
to
really
stop.
that late?
Yeah, it's 11.
Holy shit.
10:58.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah.
I feel like doing these.
Yeah.
That's how it should feel. I feel like I've been sitting here for 30 minutes, but it's been like
Yeah.
2 hours.
It's been good. It's been good. Right? So we should say goodbye.
I know we'll never use an Olympus again
Yeah, unless
unless we have to.
everything's rented out again. Like these motherfuckers.
Just
you know,
schmooze off Joe.
but- yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
I want to have Joe here sometime.
Joe, we love the Olympus. It is a fantastic camera. The fact that it's called OMD is like, oh my
Dick.
dick.
Oh my
It's
dick.
lovely, all right? And I want to see your beautiful hair. And,
Sometime
you
soon.
know, if you do come, I might stroke your dick. Hopefully that convinces you to come.
Maybe be a homosexual. We'll see.
Yeah, a hama.
Homosexual.
Yeah,
Okay.
homosexual.
All right. Anyway.